Hey everybody, it's Rich here from HFX Gaming Memories, and we are doing another cocktail and game pairing. I was thinking about my past a lot and kind of those games that got me really hooked into video gaming in my early childhood. And a date stands out. September 13th, 1993. Mortal Monday. It was the day us kids raised our hands in victory. It was in the commercials. It was in the comic books. It was ever. We were finally getting 4 home ports of Mortal Kombat, the hit arcade game that we can finally play in our living room. Little did we know the impact that that game release would have on the video game industry. I recently watched the Mortal Kombat movie and fell in love with it all over again, and all I could think about was, we really need to make a Scorpion versus Subzero Cocktail Day. So today, that's what we're going to be doing, and we're going to be looking at the original 4-port release of Mortal Kombat, so stay tuned. So even though I absolutely love Scorpion, we're going to be starting with the Subzero Cocktail first. This is not just a great tasting cocktail, it's beautiful looking. Now, of course, it's all about presentation with Subzero, so of course we're going to need a chilled glass. So what you can see here is I've actually put it in the freezer and I've rimmed the glass preemptively with sugar. That's just going to give it that nice frosty look. I've also thrown some water into it just to make it look like it's frozen in some areas, a little thicker around the glass, a little weaker in the areas around the back. That's just very similar to how Sub-Zero freezes somebody, and I wanted to give it that authentic look. You can see that it's melting pretty quickly in front of these lights, so you want to get this in front of your guests pretty soon. We're going to take our shaker cup, open it up. We're going to need lots of ice because this obviously has to be cold. It's a Sub-Zero drink. What would you expect? We're going to throw that into our shaker, and we're going to hit it with 2 ounces of white rum. Just kind of eyeballing things today, just for a little fun because it's a Saturday. It's a long weekend where I am. We're going to go with a nice 1/2 ounce freshly squeezed lime. And of course, it's Sub-Zero, so we need some blue curacao. Probably an ounce, 1/2 ounce. You can kind of play with this, kind of go for what you really like. If you want a little bit more color and orange. Now obviously that's a lot of straight alcohol for this drink. Next thing we're going to do is a little bit of white cranberry. That's just to give it some juice and a little bit of body. Real simple, not a lot of ingredients, very easy to make. Give it a shake. You can really feel that starting to chill. It feels like my hand is actually sticking to this mixer, so kind of like a Sub-Zero attack. Then we're just going to quickly strain that into our glass. You see that nice blue color, how it mixes with the ice. We're just going to go up near the brim. Now here's where you can get a little fancier. In terms of garnish, I thought it'd be fun just to honor Sub-Zero's fatality. And I've got a grape on a stick. You could use a cherry, whatever you have lying around your home. Just stick that in there. There's our fatality. Now the first time I made this, I wanted to add a little pizzazz to it. So what I did was get one of these frozen ice balls. And I took a cheese shredder and I just put some shaved ice right on top of the drink. It's not going to last very long, so again, it's really about presentation. Just be very careful when you're using a cheese shredder. You don't want to get your fingers caught in there and give yourself your own fatality. And there we have the Sub-Zero cocktail. Just look at that. Flawless victory. Okay, so that's the Sub-Zero icy drink. Now we're going to move on to a spicy Scorpion drink. Something you're going to love about the channel now is I've actually put in a second camera down below so I can show you a little bit more details into what goes into the drinks, how it looks, rather than trying to hold it up at the distance camera. Hard thing to do when you're running this all by yourself. So we're going to just start with a martini glass. Now I actually got this recipe from the Martini Shot blog. They've got a bunch of social media that I've put in the description below, so please make sure you give them a follow. They actually do movie reviews and cocktail pairing, so very similar to our channel. So we're going to be doing some work with them over the next few years, definitely. So give them a check. What we're going to do here is I've actually filled our shaker glass with jalapenos. Now this drink actually calls for a Diablo spicy rum, I believe, or it's a Carolina Reaper rum. I can't get that here. So what I'm going to actually do is try to infuse a little bit of spice myself. I probably should have soaked these jalapenos in advance just to really extract the flavor, but on a time crunch, we can do this fairly quickly. We're going to add 1 ounce of tequila right into here, and we're going to grab our muddler, and then we're just going to and just push down, try to extract a little bit of that jalapeno flavor. You could go with a Thai chili pepper too if you're really brave, or something a little spicier. I still have the rest of this video to do, so I really don't want to be sitting here sweating. It's already hot enough in this small room with the lights that I have. That should be good. What we're going to do to make the rum, of course, add a little bit of rum, say half an ounce. And then we're going to just muddle some more. Add half an ounce of lime. Ooh. Yep, that'll wake you up in the morning. Take that out. And then we're going to add probably about 2 ounces or so of pineapple juice. Now before we shake this up, we always want to add ice just to give it a little bit of cool. We don't want to be drinking spicy hot drinks. The spice should come from the flavor, not the actual drink. Give that a shake. Now you can strain, or you can double strain this in just to make sure that you don't actually get any of the seeds into your drink. Now you see that's coming out kind of a yellow like Scorpion. And from here, this is where you can pick what you'd like. The original recipe calls for an Italian sparkling wine that I just didn't pick up, so I just got something that's nice and dry and crisp. And all we're going to do is layer that over the top, just a slow pour, a little bit of bubbly. When I originally was looking for a Scorpion drink, what I actually wanted to do was something with Sambuca where I could light it on fire, but I'm not a black licorice fan. I wasn't sure how it would contrast with this, so that's something you can experiment with. In terms of garnish, I'm just going to stick a slice of jalapeno in there. And there we go. That is our Scorpion drink. So you can make them for your friends, go head to head, see which is the more powerful drink, what people like better. Personally, this is the first time I've actually made this. Toasty. Now, let's get on to playing some Mortal Kombat. As I said in the intro, Mortal Kombat was released to home console, Super Nintendo, Sega, Game Boy, and Game Gear on September 13th, 1993. I was really into fighting games back then, even the bad ones, but I loved playing Street Fighter, but Mortal Kombat was a game changer for me. The first time I ever played it was actually in Bedford Place Mall and Radio Shack for the Sega Genesis, and it just blew my mind. It's probably the reason I chose the Sega over the Super Nintendo. You know, maybe not the best choice. Sega definitely didn't hold up in the later years, but again, I was 11 or 12, and Mortal Kombat had blood, and it just seemed edgy, and I wanted to be a teenager, so I had to get this because that was going to prove that I was an older kid, right? I think a lot of us had that mindset. So Mortal Kombat's definitely gone through a lot of changes into the 3D world. The game's been rebooted. Of course, the story, like any long franchise, starts to intertwine and get changed a little bit, but today we're just going to be focusing on the first game only. So the plot is that there is a tournament held every generation between Outworld and Earthrealm. Whoever wins 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments can then invade the other world. For the last 500 years, Goro has been the undefeated champion, winning 9 out of 10 tournaments, meaning they only need one more for victory, and then they can invade Earthworld. Ultimately, the goal of Mortal Kombat is to get through all the tournament fighters, defeat the four-armed Goro, and take out Shang Tsung, who challenges you even though you've beaten the champion. Not sure why they did that. I think it was one of those double or nothing moves. Whenever Mortal Kombat got brought up as kids, the big debate was who had the better game, Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo. And again, rudimentary kids, you know, we always thought of simple things. Well, Sega's better because it has blast processing, whatever that is. So let's look at it simply. Sega was better because it had blood. That was all we thought, and that's all that mattered. We wanted these adult games, we wanted fatalities, and Super Nintendo did not have that. So therefore, the Sega Genesis was obviously the superior game. But really, was it? So Rob and I actually played a lot of Mortal Kombat on the 16-bit games this week, just to kind of get a feel for it. I played a lot of these games, a lot of it I'd forgotten, so I really wanted to spend a few hours just playing them and remembering them, and I thought we'd look at a little bit of comparison to see what game is better than the other. So let's take a look. Right away, let's talk about blood. That's the most important thing, I'd say, whenever Mortal Kombat's brought up. It's because of Mortal Kombat, and I guess Night Trap to a lesser extent, that there's a ratings board for video games. And rightfully so. This was not just cartoony violence, it was person-on-person violence with very brutal fatalities. Yes, they're very, very, very tame compared to today's games, and very pixelated, but nonetheless, it definitely caused a lot of controversy among parents. So, The Sega Genesis didn't actually have blood outright. You had to put in a code. So, at this code screen, where it keeps saying the word code and hinting you have to hit ABACABB. Still remember it after all these years. There's also a debug menu where you can type in down, up, left, left, A, right, down at the start menu, also known as the Dullard code, where you can also enable blood. The Super Nintendo did not have blood. The fatalities also were a lot more tame. That being said, it really doesn't ruin the game overall. Instead of blood, you get sweat, very similar to Street Fighter. Some of the fatalities, while they may not have blood, are still pretty brutal. Scorpion's is exactly the same, where he torches the person to death. Sub-Zero in the Sega Genesis one rips off the spine and holds it up in victory. In the Super Nintendo version, he still freezes them and shatters them, instantly killing them, so it's still pretty violent. Overall, it is nice to have the blood because it's very similar to what was in the arcade, but let's look at some of the other factors. One of the big things that stood out for me on my replay was music. The arcade had decent soundtrack and it's definitely fitting to the game style, and the Super Nintendo mimicked it perfectly. But Sega blew them out of the water on this. Sega actually went and redid the entire soundtrack, and it's just a little bit more upbeat. Every stage, the soundtrack really seems to fit the mood. Just listen to the pit theme. I couldn't believe how great this was. Now, music is only one part of sound. Next comes the sound effects. The Sega Genesis really fails at this. There's just a lot of generic grunting. The announcer is barely noticeable in this game. The Super Nintendo, everyone seems to have their unique sounds. Just listen to Raiden when he does his special move. This is non-existent in the Sega Genesis version, so I definitely have to say the Super Nintendo really nailed the sound effects. Let's look at graphics. Yet again, as expected, Super Nintendo has the better graphics. They actually look like the arcade. When you compare them side by side, there is a noticeable difference. Even the frame rates on the digitized characters is different. One thing that really bothered me in this game was that they just did a direct palette swap of Sub-Zero and Scorpion, which everyone knows, but just look at the stance. At least in the original arcade port and the Super Nintendo, Sub-Zero and Scorpion had their own stance. Not in this version. So really, when you compare the two, it's really what you're looking for. If you want blood and violence, which most people play Mortal Kombat for, you're going for the Sega Genesis. It's also got better controls. You'll notice that the input is smoother and a little bit more responsive than the sluggish Super Nintendo. If you're looking for great music, you're going for Sega. If you want one that really mimics the gameplay, graphics, and look of the arcade, go with that. To be honest, I have both games because they play completely differently. I did find the Super Nintendo a little bit more challenging and aesthetically pleasing, but sometimes I want the good old-fashioned fatalities. So let's talk about a few other things that are great about Mortal Kombat. The big secret character that everyone talks about is Reptile. In order to fight Reptile, you have to go to the pit and wait for something to fly by the moon. You also have to get double flawless victory, fatality, without hitting a block. It's definitely a lot of things to do. I actually did it in the arcade once because I had played the game so much. Don't think I could do it again. Reptile is just a palette swap of Scorpion and Sub-Zero, who can use both of their moves. Reptile later would develop his own character, but for this game, it was just something really fun. Now, if you're going away for the weekend and you're not taking your Sega or Super Nintendo with you, good news. There is 2 portable versions of Mortal Kombat. First up is the Game Boy. Again, you have limited capability on a Game Boy, so you can't really port an arcade game to a Game Boy, but they did their best. Unfortunately, the game is very sluggish and plays in slow motion. Even the control input is extremely staggering. I couldn't get a single power move off. Scorpion's move is back, back, A. Always has been, always will be. But in this, it's back, back, A. Very slow to actually pull off a power move. There's only 2 levels, and again, there's very limited characters. The one good thing about the Game Boy is when you beat it, you can actually put in a code to play as Goro. I didn't play it long enough to actually get through this. The Game Gear version, definitely a little better. but again, it suffers from the limitations of the system. Yes, it's in color, there is a blood code, there's fatalities, again, 2 stages, limited characters, and the sound effects are just horrendous. So definitely, if you're going on a trip back in the day, you want to have your Walkman as your backup music. So once again, thank you for joining me for Cocktails and Game Pairing. I really hope you liked this quick overview of Mortal Kombat. It was a lot of fun to do these head-to-head cocktails. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at HFX Gaming Memory. Email me your stories, cocktails, and games at hfxgamingmemories@gmail.com. Subscribe, follow, share with your friends, put some stories in the comments, and remember, game and drink responsibly. We'll see you next time.